Well, hello everyone, good morning. Thank you to the committee for inviting me to come and speak to you all today. It's a great pleasure for me to be here, mainly because I think I have the chance to bring you a really optimistic message when it comes down to this serious problem of fractures and catastrophic injury in horses. Let me start with just a bit of background. What I'm about to describe for you is not actually my day job. I've spent my whole life trying to predict performance in racehorses, studied tens of thousands of them, and one of the things we did was to put sensors on the horses to try and get a measure of how they were moving across the ground. That helped us distinguish between good ones and less good ones. And so when all these fractures started to happen, I knew from my prior experience where I'd seen this sensor signal change that I could possibly offer something to the industry, that we had it within our power and within our knowledge to bring to you all a system which I felt could identify these potential catastrophic horses before they happened, so that we could intervene and save them. So we got after that. We tried to get help here, there and everywhere without any success, I'm afraid. So a group of 4 of us just persevered and kept going until we ended up with the product I'm going to show you today. This is where we're up to. So the reasons for my optimism, went back, sorry, forward. Yeah, these are the reasons that I'm optimistic about this information I'm giving you today. You may have heard or read already that when we have a catastrophic injury in a racehorse, in 85% of those cases, there's been some pre-existing pathology. There's something going on all the time inside these horses. It's been going on often for weeks or months. Therein lies the opportunity. If we could just find a way to spot that pre-existing pathology, then it gives us an opportunity to intervene. Thus far, until this information I'm going to show you today, we couldn't spot it. The horses were being checked in the morning, and the veterinary inspection didn't reveal it, the riders couldn't feel it, the trainers couldn't see what was going on. So these areas of pre-existing pathology were not being detected. But I knew that with sensors, with the right equipment, that we could in fact detect them. These modern day sensors are just great. The first ones we got in 2005, big clumsy things, are rather unreliable, but now there's just sensors everywhere. Sensor technology is exploding, and with that is our ability to do this job. And of course this stuff's many, many times more effective than a human being. Part of the problem that we've faced thus far, not being able to crack the problem of catastrophic injury, is that we've been using human beings as our instrument to measure. Well, human beings just aren't up to that particular task. Things are happening far too quickly, they're far too subtle, and so the human being doesn't see it and can't feel it, and therefore it's gone unnoticed. And I hope I'll show you in a little while how dramatically different it is once you get your hands on the appropriate sensors. So, as I've said already, our prior experience told us that we could expect some good luck with this. So what was the need? What was it that our industry needed? The vets in practice had told me, if only we knew which horse it was, we've got the wherewithal to be able to detect these pre-existing pathologies, but we don't know where to look. There's 1,200 of them on the backstretch. Where do we go? So the need was for a screening test. Now, there are certain things that are important about a screening test. It has to be easy to operate on a race day. We can't be getting anything really complicated that's going to take even 10 minutes, 5 or 10 minutes to do. A race day is too much of a well-programmed event. It's choreography in place. Things have to happen in a sequence. There's no room to put 5 or 10 minutes of something new in the middle of a race day. So it had to be very easy to operate. It has to be fast. It's no good waiting for 2 weeks to get the results back. We need to know what's going on. I'm afraid it has to be inexpensive. The racetracks have no money. I mean, that's just the bottom line. When you come down to try and get some of these innovative things going, there's no cash. So this thing had to be inexpensive. it also had to have a low false positive rate. We don't want to be getting a lot of alarms over horses that have got nothing wrong with them, and neither do we want to be missing those horses thinking they're okay and have them then go and break down. So the ideal result, no disruption, empowers the trainers. I felt when we set off to do this that if there was to be an answer, it's going to be in empowering the trainers and their veterinarians. Those are the people responsible for the care and the welfare of the horse. So we have to get them into the answer. And the answer is we've got to give them information early and fast so they can get ahead of the problem and protect the horse. Another thing that's going to come out of this is that we now can get measurements from these horses. We've got data, and so it's been referred to earlier on that we need standardized rules around the country so everybody knows where they stand. And if you put sensors on horses and you get this kind of data, then the industry at large can establish the regulations and the rules by which we all want to live. And of course this thing has to work. That goes without saying, but harder to do than you might imagine. So this is our accelerometer. You can see there in the palm of my hand. Weighs about 3 ounces, fits in a pocket underneath the saddle cloth, and it's measuring acceleration, which that's basically force. It's measuring the forces forward and backward, longitudinal, that is, vertical, up and down, and the medial lateral, that's the side-to-side movement. So one of the underlying principles here that we had to rely upon, which we knew already, was that each horse has a very, very unique way of going. And the way in which he moves across the ground is dependent upon the shape of his skeleton. As you can see in this particular horse here, which happens to be Secretariat, when he's got that right front leg stretched out in front of him, it's going as far as it can go. You can see that on the picture. And the extent to which that will go out and come back is entirely dependent upon the angle of his shoulder, the length of his bones. His back end is dependent upon the length of his body, etc., etc. So each horse has a unique fingerprint of the way in which he covers the ground. So let me show you what that looks like in a sensor. Now don't get confused about all these squiggly lines. You don't even need to worry about that much. But this is one horse. The top part of this graph is his first start as a 2-year-old, and those are the first 10 strides coming out of a gate. And that's what the data looks like when you get it off your sensor. The 3 different colours, 3 different directions that the force is going, and the peaks there are roughly when the front legs hit the ground. So you see a certain degree of regularity, you see a certain degree of displacement, etc. That is the fingerprint for that particular 2-year-old. Now that down below, that graph down below, came about 6 weeks later. The horse had gone off and breezed twice and raced once at another location and came back, and these are the same 10, these are the first 10 strides out of the race on that second occasion. And look at the difference. This sensor is screaming at us. The first stride out of the gate, everything has gone haywire. You can see that for yourself. And this horse was wrong with his very first stride. That went on for 70 seconds before the jockey, trying to ride for a finish, the leg finally snapped, I'm afraid. Down went the horse. It was euthanized. The jockey fortunately survived. But that lasted for 70 seconds. It's not very common for a horse to put his foot in a hole or that kind of thing that you hear. They go on for seconds and seconds. 70 seconds is the longest we've seen. The average about 10, 15 seconds it takes before the horse actually breaks. But it's a protracted event when it actually happens. And the other thing to see about this, I don't believe there's a single person in this room can't look at that slide and see there's a difference. This was in New York. This horse was passed by the best vets in the morning. It was ridden by the best jockeys. It's trained by the very best trainers. Everybody missed it. This horse was allowed to run. Every one of you in this room can see that that horse shouldn't have been running. So I'm trying to point out that when you've got sensors, this problem that we all face that we think is so serious and so astronomical and so difficult to crack, it isn't. The problem's fairly straightforward to crack so long as you have the right instrument. So this is one way we look at the test. This is another way. in this particular case, we've taken data from a whole race. This is vibrations that we were able to measure in the horse's body. It's vibrating as it goes, and as things go wrong, the vibrations change. So that's the data for a complete race, starting on the left, finishing on the right. The solid black line is the average, and then the dotted line are the plus or minus 1 standard deviation, which describes the fingerprint of that horse. So watch a series of races. There's one. There's another one. These are about 2-3 weeks apart. There's another one. There's another one. These are all races falling generally within the fingerprint of this horse. This is a 6-year-old mare. There's another one again. Now that happens. All of a sudden, we see that kind of data. The vibrations in this horse have gone completely crazy and right off the scale different. The jockey didn't feel it. This horse ran second. Everybody was delighted. The horse was sound, and the owner couldn't wait to bring the horse back again. It was going to be one of the favorites. This is what happened the next time, this black line. It started okay, right in the middle of where it should be, and about 20 seconds in, it started to power down. And this is what horses are able to do, we've found. That when there's trouble, when something's coming, they're able to stabilize themselves. A bit like you or I might do if you have a sore knee or a sore ankle. You might just keep your back a little bit more rigid as you're going, trying to protect how you go. Well, the horses do the same thing. And this particular horse powered down, went along that black line, but it was the favorite. So the jockey set off to try and win the race at about 62, 64 seconds. The horse lasted another 10, 15 seconds. And then in this case, it broke both front legs. Again, unfortunately, the jockey was okay, but the horse was euthanized. So again, can anybody in this room not see that? This is another way of looking at the data that's dead obvious. This is not a difficult problem if we all get behind it. Let's look at another example. This is now looking at a single stride. And again, forget all the wiggly lines. You're going to get the gist of it. But this is showing information from the accelerometer on single strides. In A, that's grade 1, grade 2 winners, sound horses. That's what a grade 1 horse looks like when it's going across the ground. In B, that's a sound $10,000 claimer. Somewhat similar. A $10,000 claimer isn't in fact that different from a grade 1 horse. If it separates by 1/100th of a second on each hind limb stance, that will cost it about 20 lengths over a mile race. 1/100th of a second per stand cost you 20 lengths. So that's the sensitivity with which our horses are running. 1/100th of a second, 1/200th of a second, these are critical events. And we can't see that. A blink of an eye, about as fast as we can recognize and relate to, is 1/10th of a second. So this is pointing out to you again how a human being, our eyes and fingers, are not up to the task of solving this problem of catastrophic injury. But these kinds of instruments, these sensors clearly are. So look at number C. Again, everybody can see this. This was taken from a grade one race. This horse had won over $500,000. He should have been like A, but he wasn't. He was like C. The beginning of that stride is when the first hind limb comes on the ground. It's very disrupted compared to A up above. And then the blue bits in the middle are where the front legs are on the ground. That's absolutely horrific. He's going up and down far too much. He's leaning way over to the left. And then all that squiggly stuff on the right, the last third of that stride, that's what he's doing when he's in the air. So this horse is trying his best when he's in the air to reposition himself so the next stride when he hits the ground will be okay. So we have to summarize this for the guys at the track. We need action. We need to know what's happening. We can't be messing around all day long. So I wanted a visceral response to the test. So we give them a traffic light. Everybody knows how to read a traffic light. If you get a red light, watch out. This is a copy of the report that the regulatory vet could get. So think about this for a minute. There's a complete race, 10 horses in the race. So each of those horses has had data collected 2,400 times every second throughout the entirety of the race. And 4 minutes after the race, the regulatory vet can see that. And as you walk past the room with the computer in, rushing out to do your next job, take one glance to your left at that screen, and you immediately know that of all those horses, you better go and have a quick look at number 3. Something went funny. So just realize the enormity of the data that you can judge in just milliseconds as you walk past and end up being focused on the animal that's going to be most in danger of a catastrophic injury. There's a lot of information we give to the vets. I can't get through it here because we haven't got time. That's an interesting one, though, because it's the longitudinal study. Here you can see how this horse has performed over time in his races. You can see him slowly getting worse. He gets an amber, he gets a little bit better, and then he goes to a red. So you can get this longitudinal history of the horse. This can go with the horse. In the ideal of worlds, I don't know if this ends up with HISA. I think that's where it should be, to be honest. This should go with the horse everywhere he goes, so we know what to expect in his next run. So this is what happens at the end of a day. You've got 70% of the horses will come back green, 12% will come back red, 18% will be amber. And in a study of 6,600 horses, this is what happened. There were 20 fatalities. 18 of the 20 had a red flag warning before it happened, right? 18 out of 20, 90% got a red flag warning before the horse broke his leg. So if this can all be validated, if everybody who wants to go over this can tear it apart all they want, but in essence, right there, I believe the catastrophic injury problem goes away. We can spot these animals coming, we've provided a screen, and now it's up to the vets, the veterinary profession, to go after these animals and find out which ones are the ones in danger of a catastrophic injury. So this is what happens at the track. The sensor is pre-programmed the night before. It goes onto in the saddle cloth up there near the jock's room. We have a little table to work from. The valet saddles up takes the saddle cloth to get the horse tacked up. The horse runs. The valet gets the saddle cloth back, brings it back to the little table, download it onto the computer, up to the cloud for analysis and storage, back down to the vet. 4 minutes later, he's got the answer. Usually they like them all at one go, though, and so we post them on a secure Google Drive or a Dropbox at the end of the day, so whoever wants to can go and study them and, and go through them. The cost for this, $35 a run. It seems like peanuts, but I can't get it anywhere. The tracks haven't got the money. They don't know how to handle this. So even at a small fee like $35, we're struggling to get acceptance. We'll find a way. There's got to be ways in which we can do this. But just recently, and this happened just last week, we got saved by this guy. I don't know how many of you people know Mr. Jim McInvale. He's known as Mattress Mac. He was famous recently because he just won a $75 million bet. Well, some of it he sent our way, and he is so enthused about what we're doing with this, and he always wants to look after the horses, he always wants to look after the jockeys, and so he started, after the name of his stallion, the Run Happy Wellness Initiative. And he has agreed to subsidize the racetracks to do these tests. So if any of you out there are operating a racetrack and you want to get this system in place, we can even pay the bill for you if you'll just do this and give us a chance to get this system up and rolling. So we're very, very grateful to Mr. McInvale for stepping up and doing this. Okay, I think I've probably gone over a little bit, but I'll leave it at that. Thank you very much.
Fantastic. Thank you. Lastly, this morning, we have Dr. Will Farmer, the Equine Medical Director for